Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is a quick bonus little am reading video for the books that I started in August and just recently finished. We are now in September, and my August literary newsletter is officially live. I make a monthly newsletter on my WordPress blog where I highlight literary news that caught my fancy, and I have snippets of the Goodreads reviews of all the books I read that month, a book pick, and a book video, and etc., all linked down below. But I thought I would officially take a second to talk briefly about the two books that I have not yet mentioned before moving on into September reading. So the first book I have to talk about is Commonwealth by Ann Patchett. This book was on my Goodreads TBR for years, and in fact was in the #1 spot on Goodreads for a couple of months now, so I'm excited that I finally, ticked it off here. And I enjoyed it. This was a family drama. In fact, I think at least loosely based on Patchett's real life or her real blended family. This book is about a blended family, focusing primarily on the children of said blended family, the summers they had together, the impact that the family had on the rest of their lives. Some major events that happened were that one of the children died over the summer in a sudden circumstance, and then a couple decades later his stepsister was dating a famous author and sort of told the life story, the family story of the affair and the marriages and then the death, and it became that author's comeback novel called Commonwealth, like this. And Commonwealth refers to the fact that a lot of the action of the story takes place in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So there's that. But the story is very decentralized. It's these chapters that, jump back and forth across a 50-year time span. We're primarily following, I think, the young woman who ultimately dates this guy, Franny. She's, I would say, our main character, and I think is the one kind of based off of Patchett, at least in the age and pecking order sort of thing. And she has a biological sister and then 4 step-siblings. And it's just a novel that really does go deep insular into character, although I felt like, it's one of those things where some of the characters were more fleshed out than others, and the ones who did briefly get a POV spotlight, I felt like if you took a step back, their lives were a little too, I don't know, quippy or convenient, the types of stuff that they got up to, but then were never fully explored. It just felt, I don't know, a little eyebrow archy to me, one sibling going off to be a Buddhist in Switzerland or Europe anyway, and another one marries an African man, which, it's fine, but he comes off as a caricature because you don't really get to know him. I don't know, this type of stuff kind of stuck out to me. Almost like, the whole premise of can you decentralize a story? It's almost like a thesis, and I'm not sure it entirely worked, but the writing was beautiful, and when you get into the, actual chapters, there's just such depth to characters. Just as a whole, I don't think it necessarily worked, but I mean, a lot of it did. I think, it's Franny's story. I kind of wish she just focused more concretely on Franny and maybe her stepbrother Albie as the main characters who were the most fleshed out, and really got to say what this family did to them and meant to them. And there were some, I don't know, other things I appreciated, like how it began with Franny's christening party and then ended with a Christmas party 50 years later, where again Franny was kind of at the center of things, or at least was the POV character. So I feel like there is so much here that is integral to sort of what it means to be a human, and the beauty I find in literary fiction of taking, those small moments in life and being able to really make a complex character and complex look at reality from them. It was on display for the characters who were the main characters, and yeah, I have to say, in terms of that, I really did appreciate it. This next book I read for my page 112 tag that I do monthly, where I randomly choose 3 of my physical unread books and read page 112 and decide which one I want to add to the TBR. This month it was A Bend in the Stars by Rachel Berenbaum. I'll link to my page 112 tag video down below. I have been excited about this one for a while. I feel like I first heard about it when Steve Donahue was kind of singing its praises, and that was even before it was published, and that was a few years ago now. And it deals very heavily with Jewish history, and I always appreciate that. The premise is that the year is 1914. You know, the world is about to enter the Great War. This takes place in Russia. It follows Jewish characters who, you know, were already, you know, among the downtrodden of Russian society, and it only gets worse as, you know, war is ramping up. So we're following primarily these 2 siblings. Vanya is a physicist who's studying the theory of relativity, and his sister Miri is a surgeon. And, you know, shortly before Vanya's going to be forcibly conscripted into the army, he runs off, well, it's a little more complicated, but anyway, with Miri's fiancé. They run off together. They're tracking this other, you know, fellow scientist from America who's come to photograph the eclipse. And the eclipse is, you know, it plays into the theory of relativity. It particularly plays into some of Vanya's theories about gravity and light and bending of light and all of that good stuff. I mean, he's a fictional character, but Berenbaum is basically setting him up to be the man who could have beat Einstein if, you know, if history went a little differently. So that's what he's up to. And then Miri and a sort of enigmatic figure she saves called Sasha, they ultimately follow him because the crunch is on at home. Vanya has a colleague who's been stealing his work and, you know, using sort of prejudice against Jewish people to sort of, you know, easily do that. And everyone's under house arrest, and they're, you know, looking, he has all the resources to look for Vanya, and Vanya leaves a hidden clue about where he's going, and his sister wants to find him, and just to, I don't know, keep ahead of everything that's, you know, against them, as it were. You know, it adds to the tension and all that, and I feel like there's some cat and mouse sort of stuff. I mean, the plottiness of it, you know, it drives everything forward. It was a really relatively quick read. I read, I think, a couple hundred pages, the majority of this in a day, so there's that. But I felt like it was too plot heavy, and the writing was more pedestrian than I would have thought it was. I feel like I really was going into this hoping I would really be more swept away than I ultimately was, because I don't feel like the characters were developed enough for my taste. And then there was a love triangle aspect for Miri, which really didn't do much for me at all. I found it really disappointing, I suppose. Or, you know, I mean, I don't even necessarily mind the idea of love triangles, but in this case, you know, the characters were, I don't know, not developed enough for me to care about it, and just felt, you know, over the top. There's also a framing device from 2000, which I suppose is sort of needed because Berenbaum is rewriting history of, you know, of scientific discovery, and she has to sort of prop Vanya in there somehow, and his legacy, you know, being propped up by his descendants, or Miri's descendants, and all that. But, you know, again, it didn't do much for actual characters, because I feel like the characters weren't the strongest part of this story, and that always disappoints me, that when characters don't feel like the strongest part of the story. But still, you know, there's so much history. There's so much history of anti-Semitism and of Jewish life in Russia at the time, and I'm always going to appreciate a look into that stuff. I also really like the cover. And there's that as well. And I am looking forward to reading Berenbaum's new book still. I officially put it on a TBR video I did a couple months ago that I'm hoping to get to later this year, that book. So, you know, I'm not going to throw the towel in on Berenbaum, but I was kind of hoping I would have liked this a little more. But speaking of future reading, or perhaps current reading, I thought I might go ahead, since it is certainly September, to go ahead and talk about some of my TBR for the month, the immediate future, that is. September can be a lot of things to a lot of different people in terms of reading goals. For me, I tend to focus in part on sci-fi September elements. And in that vein, I am just beginning The Best of All Possible Worlds by Karen Lord. This is another book that's near the top of my Goodreads list, so I'm also checking off that resolution that I made at the beginning of the year to read the books at top of Goodreads TBR. Yes, anyway. So this is a science fiction work that takes place on an alien planet with creatures, I think, who are, at least have a human baseline in terms of their genetics. They might be a little bit different now, but I think they're definitely meant to be human, and this is the sort of book that really probes culture and philosophy and sort of who we are. I feel like an Ursula K. Le Guin sort of vibe. I remember hearing about it from Elizabeth at Books and Pieces on her BookTube channel, which alas I think hasn't been around for a while, but I was intrigued and I'm hoping for good things. There's a couple of other books that I'm calling fantasy books that I also want to get to this month. I'm getting from the library soon. They are books of biblical fiction by Yochi Brandis, which she's an Israeli writer and also scholar of biblical studies, and I know it might be a stretch to say biblical fiction is fantasy, or maybe not, depending on who you are, but honestly, what it comes down to most for me is that I'm excited to read them, and most Sci-Fi Septembers I devote some reading to Jewish-inspired SFF and do a video on that, so expect that later in the month. Going back to TBR games, there's another one that I partake in quarterly that was started by Rick McDonnell, the BookTube Spin, that he does a spinny wheel every quarter, and we have to read the book that coincides. Anyway, the one that I have to read before the end of the third quarter, so aka in September, is The Sound of One Hand Clapping by Richard Flanagan. This is the book that I landed on last time. I'm a little anxious because I actually did read this for a previous page 112 tag, and I feel like I wasn't too impressed with what I read, but I still own the physical copy, and then I put it in the new game, and now I have to read it, and I should be thinking positively. I might be positively surprised by what I find in here. Anyway, this is a book that takes place in Tasmania, and I think it is a family drama, and I like family drama, so we got some stuff going for this one. And finally, I have two more books that I officially have to read for the BookTube Prize, where I am a judge of nonfiction for the finals round. This is Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe, and this is Chasing Me to My Grave by Winifred Rembert. Hard to kind of hold up together their different sized books, but yes, I have a hard deadline of the end of this month to finish these so I can get my ballot into Robert, our director, in time for him to tally things up and announce the winners. So yeah, this in fact is probably my most important reading goal of the month. But I'm hoping I also have time to get to this book as well. This is How Beautiful We Were by Mbolo Mbue, which is on the fiction ballot for the BookTube Prize finals this year. I am not an official fiction judge for the prize, not for the finals anyway, but this book has been on my radar for a long time. I wanted to read it anyway, and I'm really excited that it made it to the finals round, and I'm hoping I have the time this month to go ahead and read it and see what I think about it. And I can even talk about it, in September, unlike my nonfiction picks, since I'm not an official judge. So there's that. Yes, I'm hoping to get to this book. There's other books as well that I don't have on hand and are also part of my September TBR. I have a TBR of 10 books that I'm hoping to get to in September, or at least start in September. So we shall see how it goes. And that about covers it for me. This whole time I've been rambling, I've been looking at just one bar on my battery, and it hasn't gone down yet, so huzzah, I've beat the system, as it were. And I've pretty much run out of things to say, so there we have it. I do intend to be back on this channel imminently in the next couple of days to do my monthly Author's Answer video, wherein I answer a question that was posed by AuthorTuber J.D. Archer and his writing group about reading and writing related matters, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, everyone, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.